Hello, and welcome to another episode of Season 3 of Legal Wellbeing in Action. Today's episode, Pulling Back the Curtain, Addiction, Treatment, and Recovery Unveiled, is another installment of this year's theme, Wellbeing, a Deeper Dive. In this episode, Dr. Sherry Young and Pam Moore discuss the symptoms of substance use and abuse, the different levels of treatment, resources and services that are available, in other words, who you call, and what you can expect after the initial I need help phone call. After listening to this podcast, you will have a better understanding of how a person would know they are struggling with alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, or some other issue, how and where they would start getting help, and what the initial stages of the road to recovery look like, including how a person struggling with an addiction would get to an inpatient treatment facility if that level of care is needed. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoy it.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill, for that introduction. This is Pam Moore, and today I have with me Sherry Young. And I know Bill already gave you her bio and my bio, and so we're going to get right into the conversation that we're going to have today. But since Recovery Month is coming up next month, what we are talking about today is recovery. And I specifically had Sherry come in and to talk about recovery because she has a very unique background. She has a background where she works as a professional and with professionals in recovery. And then she's also got her own personal story of recovery. And so she's very adept to having this conversation with me today. And I would say an expert in the area. So Sherry, let me just kind of set this up. So the conversation, or where we want to go today, is not really to talk about the details of addiction or alcohol abuse or any other kind of drug use abuse. What I really want to talk about today is when a professional, let's just say, because most of our listeners are going to be in the legal community, when they think they might have an issue, or they might be struggling with alcohol or some other disorder, what should they do? And maybe we should even go over maybe just briefly, how would I know I have a problem? And then let's say, yep, I think I have a problem. And then what is my next thing I should do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Pam. And it's really an honor to, talk with you about these issues today, because as you said, I work with them every single day, with families, with individuals, with professionals. And it is my story as well. So I was a college professor and got sober, well, the last year of my drinking was when I was, a college professor, and just really had to face those issues of when was enough. And so I think what one of the indicators for me is when you keep trying things to stop or change your behavior or make improvements and nothing works. So for me, same measures, same results. I remember going on spiritual retreats. I remember swearing off. I remember, a lot of measures, and, I'm the kind of a person who is I'm successful and goal-oriented person. So in every other area of my life, I could make a decision and follow through with it. When it came to alcohol, I was powerless. I just couldn't do it. So, I would say, nothing changes if nothing changes. And if we get to a point where we recognize that, this is a problem and it's not getting any better, and in fact, it's probably going to get worse, I would say that's the moment where it's time to talk to somebody about that.
Yeah, I love that, Sherry. I use that a lot, that nothing changes if nothing changes. And thank you very much for being here, but also thank you for telling everybody a little bit about your story. And I think you laid that out very nicely. And there was one thing I was going to mention in terms of, so I want to just add on to the end of that. One of the things that I often ask those individuals that I work with that call it, that, may not know if they're struggling, or, they may know it, but they're not ready to admit it because, addiction and secrets, addiction and denial go hand in hand. So I never tell anybody, you are this or you are that or whatever. I don't believe in doing that. But one of the questions that I do ask is, how would you know if you have crossed the line? How would you know if you have a problem? And so I really believe that gets people thinking about, how would I know if I can't control this anymore? And to use your word, how would I know if I'm powerless? Lawyers are very smart and they are very high functioning, exactly as you were, and they excel in so many areas. But in this area, if you really are struggling with this, whatever you want to call it, disease, disorder, how would you know if you've crossed that line? So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so that's a great comment. The entire last year of my drinking, I knew I had a problem, and I took a lot of measures to try to resolve that problem. But, I think that the biggest issue was that for me, drinking resolved a lot. It was my solution. And so I could not see that as a problem. And so what it required for me is a paradigm shift. To see the solution that I had chosen, which was drinking daily, as a problem. And, it just, I just think that there's a moment of clarity that we all get, where we just say, this is not working for me anymore, or I can't do this anymore, or, what am I going to do? And those are just great, self-awareness questions. And fortunately, we've got some answers to that.
That's great. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's get into, let's walk down this road, right? So now I think I've got a problem. I don't want to live like this anymore. Everything I've tried is not working. I've definitely crossed that line that I thought I would never cross. And so what do I do now?
So if you're an attorney and you're listening to this podcast, you are very, very lucky, because there are lawyers and judges assistance programs all across the country. And I have worked with the state LAP programs since 2006. I know the people that run them. I know the work that they do. They are total advocate and support systems. There's nothing punitive about it. It's just, all it is advocacy. And, there's just nothing better than a sober lawyer. They're smart. And then when they're sober, they're even smarter.
Right.
But so I would say, get to know, the LAP program in your state and make the phone call, because you will find nothing but support and connection and people who understand and who've been there, before you.
Right.
I wish that they had a professor's, assistant program, but trust me, they don't.
Yeah. No, and I really appreciate that. And you're right. That is why the LAP, and I am part of the LAP here in New Mexico. That is what we are here for. So let's say I often find that lawyers, legal professionals, even, judges, law students kind of are scared. There's a lot of fear about calling the LAP. There's even a lot of fear of, oh my God, I think I am really struggling. I think I have a problem, but I don't know what treatment means. I don't know what recovery means. I don't know, even if I call the LAP, what is that next step? Like, what's going to happen? And so sometimes that's what I want to deconstruct today. That's kind of what I want to go over there's different levels of treatment. There's a step 1, there's a step 2. Of course, it depends on where you're at in how much, how long, how often, I say. And so can you help the people that are listening kind of understand at a 10,000-foot level, I call the lab, I have a problem. It's with, it's with a substance. What now? What happens?
Yeah, so I think that a program, like yours, Pam, and others, in other states, are just brilliant. You yourself are a therapist, and you understand, the questions to ask. And so your questions will not be indictments in any way, but more questions to help understand exactly where the individual is in this issue. And for some individuals, it might be something as simple as, going to local, 12-step support meetings, or going to therapy, or, going to a local intensive outpatient program. Sometimes with addiction, it's really hard to tease out how much is the symptom of addiction and how much is a primary mental health issue that, pre-existed the addiction issues, because they look a lot alike. So, those who are familiar with alcoholism and drug addiction, hear about, the all or nothing kind of thinking and behavior that is just common to, everyone who gets caught in that using pattern. And in all or nothing, we can look at that and look at the mental health diagnoses of mania and depression. So the mania is the all. It's where we're keyed up, we're going, 24/7, and can't be busy enough, can't work enough, can't spend enough, can't do enough, can't drink or use enough. And then the depression side of things is the letdown from all of that, the hangover, the incomprehensible demoralization that comes from looking in that mirror every morning after the night before you've said, I'm not ever going to do this again. And day after day, you can continue to do the same thing. So that incomprehensible demoralization, it just, it is a depressive state that takes you down. And so in one way, the symptoms of alcoholism or drug addiction mirror the symptoms of mental health with, bipolar, anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. So, I guess I'm of the mindset that when it gets to the point of where we are drinking at that level, prior to that, we have started drinking at that level to tamp down something, to numb something, to take the edge off something. And so, I know when I talk to people about their drinking, I am talking about the thing that brought them in, right? That's on the surface that we're seeing, but there's so much more under the surface that's really the meat that needs to be addressed.
It is, Pam. And, thank you for saying that, because, I think unless the why is addressed and unless an individual comes to know the why, so it could be any form of pain, physical. Some people have had surgeries and they get hooked on opiates. It can be, emotional pain, loss, grief, things not working out in one's life as they had, hoped or expected them to. Challenging, difficulty with relationships, spiritual pain, often, there can be levels of spiritual abuse or religious abuse, any kind of religion that makes a person feel like they don't measure up, like they can't measure up, that creates a kind of, spiritual malaise and a pain that how can I ever get this right? And then just, just, I think the pain of living, I think life is hard. And at some level, it beats us all up in very different ways. And, many of us have the ability to rise, to those challenges on so many fronts, and then, in certain other areas, we have an Achilles heel, and, it just sends us into that self-medicating mode.
Right, right. Yeah, and the big one that I see in the legal community is feeling overwhelmed and the pressure. The pressure of the job, the pressure of the number of cases that I'm supposed to be managing, the pressure of going into court, the pressure of co-counsel that's opposing me, the pressure of the judge that's in front of me. And I mean, it's a lot. It really is a lot. And that's also, we're not going to go into this, as a whole nother discussion, but it's what I'm seeing in those cases. And, criminal cases, domestic violence cases, child cases, family law, those are all areas where I see attorneys can have vicarious trauma. So they're affected by, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, the emotion that's in front of them. And what they are not taught in law school is how to manage this, how to hold the space, not only for the other person that's in front of them, but for themselves. So that's a whole nother conversation, but that is a lot of times why I see, people come in and that have been drinking, is alcohol absolutely works. It does. It works to tamp down. It works to take the edge off. And as they say in AA, it works until it doesn't work.
That's exactly right. Absolutely right. And as you said that, I mean, I know that there are so many stressors in the legal profession, in many professions, but particularly legal, because you're dealing with, bad stuff. I mean, people's lives are shattered. And so, the legal profession is, an attempt to, deal with that and rectify that. What I would say to attorneys is you made an incredible investment in law school and preparing yourself to be able to deal with, the issues that you're going to be faced with your clients and, in your firm. What law school doesn't prepare you for is how to deal, with those stressors and pressure and with the vicarious pain that you're carrying. Yeah. And so, taking that, that moment where you say, this is not working for me, I'm not managing this well, treatment can become another form of investment in yourself.
I love that you just segued into where I really, really want to go next, which is, you had mentioned a little bit about the different levels of treatment. I want to talk about that and kind of, make sure that people understand the different levels. And it is very individual based in terms of how much, how long, how often, what's going on with you as to where you will land on what level, right? Where you should probably go, what you should do. So I want to deconstruct that a little bit. And then also, I want our listeners to know about inpatient treatment, right? If somebody does have to go to inpatient, you are a representative for many facilities. And so maybe just talking a little bit about that so that, going to inpatient doesn't seem so big and so scary. So
I'd be happy to, Pam. So let's just kind of do in order of, the most intense, the most costly, the most serious, and that would be residential care. Usually it's a 30-day minimum. It could be 30, 60, 90, depending on the severity of the addiction. but also the interaction with mental health, or medical issues that, sometimes accompany all of that. So residential care, the next step down is called PHP, which stands for partial hospitalization. Typically, that has nothing to do with a hospital. It's just basically less hours, less intensity, but usually staying in the same residential, place, and just, having a little bit more freedom to be able to test out some of the tools that you're being given, and add on, more wellness components, perhaps, as you're, doing the individual and group therapy and the somatic healing work that really does address those core issues, the trauma, the attachment wounds, all of those drivers of addiction. The next step down would be intensive outpatient. And often, that happens locally. I actually work for a couple treatment centers that provide telehealth outpatient services, and that can be a way to maintain connection with a therapist that you've been working with in residential care. PHP, that's usually a group that meets a couple times a week, usually at hours that are convenient for professionals. And then I also like to add in there the importance of, peer support, which can be an incredible camaraderie. I actually got sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew nothing about treatment, back in the day. This was 25 years ago, and all I knew about was Betty Ford. And I thought, oh my God, as a poor college professor, there was no way I could afford anything like that. So I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was ashamed, and I saw people in there that had been coming to my classes for years. It was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And it was just like, we were wondering when you would get here. This is great. And so the camaraderie, and I never laughed so hard as I did that first year in sobriety. So because I was a daily drinker at that point, I committed to going to one meeting a day for a year. And it was a game changer. It was a life changer for me. And then I also want to mention that there are intensives. I am so fortunate. I've been doing this work since 2006. I have access to really the best of the best across the country, and I'm really good at vetting, who's the real deal and who isn't. And, so I make referrals all the time. And, fortunately, I get to connect with, people like you, and with the LAP programs and the physician health programs nationally, and make referrals for intensives. So like if someone, gets out of treatment and they're rocking along and doing well for a few months and then hit a snag, maybe a 2 to 5 day intensive might be something to sort of reset and refocus and understand what those core issues are doing now, and then how to continue, to take it to even deeper levels of recovery. So when I got sober, Pam, I honestly thought that it was going to be that, AA was going to teach me how to drink like a lady, and it did. I just can't drink alcohol. So when I drink tea or water or sparkling water, I'm good. But I had no idea the transformative effect that it would have in every level of my life. And I have to tell you, I've got 3 adult children in recovery, and our family is a very different family today. And we get each other and we love each other. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm glad thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. I always tell people that it is the best gift that you can give yourself. And those people that care about you is if you are drinking at that level, you are not present. You may be physically present, but you aren't present in any other way. And so giving the gift of yourself back
Yes.
to you and back to your family and friends is a huge gift, and it is a game changer.
I think it's the best gift we can ever give anyone in our lives.
Absolutely. I
Including
totally.
ourselves, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm glad you walked through those. I want to go back to inpatient. And so the highest level of care
Yeah.
is the inpatient treatment center that you said, 30, 60, 90. So that means either 30 days at a bare minimum, or some have to stay 60 days or some 90 days. And there are some treatment centers.
Yeah, or some fraction of that. So, once you've completed the 30, it's just going to be a matter of determining really, do I need another week? Do I need another, it just depends.
Right, right.
Physicians have a license to protect. And so, often they will require 60 to 90 days. But that's public health issue. So,
yeah. So back up before the inpatient treatment center, though, because there is about a week that happens before an intensive, an inpatient treatment center. Tell us about that week.
Okay, so are you talking about detox?
Yes, and actually, I also want to talk about the assessment that happens before detox. So, somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm having a problem, and they tell me all about it. And I may say, yeah, I really think you need to go to inpatient. Is that something that you're interested in? They may go, yes, I do think I need to go there. And then my next thought is, okay, let me call Sherry. Let me see about getting this person in. We run through, insurance. How much will their insurance pay? How much are they going to be charged out of pocket? But I'm also listening for, are they going to be going through withdrawals? Because I never tell anybody to stop drinking cold turkey, because that can lead to, some very unpleasant feelings, but also it can lead to death. I mean, alcohol is one of those drugs, and alcohol is a drug that if you stop and you start going through withdrawals, there is a chance, not everybody, but there's a chance you can have a seizure and die. And so I am very serious about listening for that and making sure that I walk. From the moment they're calling, I'm walking every day with them to get them, if inpatient is where they need to go. I'm walking with them to make sure they are doing it in a safe way. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, I kind of expanded on that, but I also want to know at some point, when I call you and you say, hey, I think they should go, they could go here. Right. Then that inpatient treatment center will reach out to them to do an assessment.
Right. So basically what we're talking, because of the way that we work in partnership with one another and, value the work that each of us does, an individual, in this setting is going to get 3 levels of assessment. So their initial call hopefully will be to you. And, you'll ask questions about how much, how often, we've learned to ask, not just 2 drinks a day, because at the end of my drinking career, I was drinking 2 glasses of wine a night, but they just happened to be out of 20-ounce, Crate and Barrel glasses. So I could say 2 glasses, and it was 2 bottles actually. So, assessment by you. Typically, when you call me, if I get an opportunity to talk with the individual as well, sometimes, as a complete stranger, I'll be able to ask some questions that, they add some additional information in there. And then what I always do is refer them, give them a cell phone number and a name of an admissions specialist that they can talk with. They will take down all of the insurance information, run the benefits, get back with them and let them know if there's going to be an out-of-pocket cost. Typically, I work with treatment centers that are private pay, private insurance. So, the ones that really break my heart are the people who have Medicaid or Medicare policies. So, for example, I'm Medicare, but, there's I mean, there would be nothing for me today. So I'm really lucky I got sober when I did. But run the insurance, and then there'll be another assessment by a medical provider prior to coming in, and they will determine whether the person needs detox. I work, two of the treatment centers that I work with that deal with both mental health and addiction and trauma, as we said, have their own detox centers. Getting a person safely there sometimes requires, someone to, accompany them in transport. Usually it's a family member, but, we can provide professional support for that if needed. And then just getting them in and getting them into detox. And usually the detox center will also be doing psychological evals, biopsychosocial, really getting the whole picture of what's going on with this individual, so that by the time they're transported to the treatment center to begin treatment, they're out of, any kinds of withdrawals and, able to begin functioning and, acquiring the tools and the resources that they need, to, get whole.
Right. Thank you for walking through that. Because I think a lot of times, I think a lot of times people don't know, an individual may not know what's going to happen next. And oh, I need to detox first. And what you're telling me not to stop drinking. I was calling you because that's exactly what I need to do. But there's a very safe way to detox, and there's a very unsafe way to detox. And so we always want to safely detox. Like Sherry said, you will be going through, 2 to 3 assessments where they're going to listen and understand financially where are you at and how we can get you in here and what your insurance and run your insurance benefits. And then also medically, where are you at and getting you in here safely, and how do we get you here? So it is a process. The lab, will walk through that whole process with that person. I even transported some people to facilities before. I will drive them there. I don't do that in all cases, but like you said, it's a partnership between the lab and the inpatient, or the detox facility, to make sure that we get them there, whoever that person is.
Yeah. So Pam, let me just say that, over the years, I've become much more particular about who I work with. And I only work with treatment centers that are privately owned. I did work with a very large, behavioral health system for 8.5 years, and it was a fabulous experience. But, what I noticed is that during my tenure with them, they acquired 24 treatment centers. And in that time, they moved from being client focused to being profit driven. And so what I look for now in treatment centers is, how integrated is their care? Do the clinicians know what medications they're on? Do the clinicians, are they able to talk on a daily basis with medical, with nursing, with psychiatry? Is there a trauma component? And is there a trauma track? Are they doing some somatic work with the clients? What is the setting? And, what's the situation regarding healthy food and exercise? So I view, the initial interventions that happen for a person with either mental health or addiction come down to wellness. They have to do with food, sleep, mindfulness, and movement.
Right.
So those are core interventions that, if a treatment center is not addressing that at kind of like a high level, in addition to, the individual therapy, the group therapy, the somatic work, then, that would not be a treatment center that I would refer to, because it doesn't truly provide integrative care.
Right.
And, I mean, like, addiction is, it's a tangled web, and the tentacles reach into every fiber of one's being. So, it's complex, and, you know, eh, I'll let me just say this: at 9 years sober, and I got sober. I never relapsed. At 9 years sober, every Sunday I wanted to kill myself.
Wow.
And, and I was glad to be sober, but I still had the problems that, I was drinking about. And so it was at that point that I began to do the core work. And thank God for that, because, that is healed today. And because I've been transformed, I don't transmit that, to other people.
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad thank you for mentioning that, Sherry. I really appreciate you being that vulnerable. And, stopping drinking, stopping drugging is only the surface level stuff. There's all the stuff underneath that we need to take care of. And there's a reason why they say alcohol is the symptom or drugs are the symptom, but it's not what's going on. And the real work, like you just said, is going into the core and working on what is causing me to drink, to numb, to tamp down. So thank you very much for saying that, because it is so true, and it is hard work. And those, I've done my own work. I have not had an alcohol use disorder. It ran its course in my family for sure on both sides. And I've had to do my own work to the core.
Yeah.
That disorder did not land on me. However, others did so I know about doing the work, and it's hard. It's the hardest work I think you will ever do. But I will also say that it is the most freeing. That if you really want to be free, if you really want to tap into a sense of freedom holistically, right? All those things you mentioned that a treatment center should be looking at, that is looking at the holistic person. That is the work that you need to do in order to free yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever is there. And I also, while you were talking, I know we've primarily talked about substance abuse today, drugs, alcohol and other drugs, but there are many, many types of addiction, many. There's gambling, there's pornography, there is eating disorders, those are all forms of addiction, and there are treatment centers for all of them. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And Pam, I just want to mention, two other things. So for me, at the 9 years sober, how I sustained myself through those first 9 years was through my work addiction. I was addicted to startups, and there was such an adrenaline rush with all of that. And I got myself into some big trouble because of it. But, I would also say, and I don't know whether Father Richard Rohr, but he has a center in Albuquerque. And what Father Rohr says is all of us are at the very least addicted to our own way of thinking. And for me, I was such a control person. I had so many controls that, I'm still letting go of so much of that. And, so this whole business of moving from sobriety, literal sobriety, to emotional and spiritual sobriety is just, what a journey.
Yes, what a journey. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still on my own journey and practicing and surrendering or letting go on a daily basis. I want to go ahead and we've talked about a lot today. This could go on for another 2 or 3 hours because it's a big topic, but we probably need to wrap it up. And so, Sherry, if people did not want to call me, did not want to call the lab, I know some people have some fear about that. how would they get in touch with you if they, and can they, are you open to them getting in touch with you and talking to you about, do I have a problem? Maybe I do need to go to inpatient. I don't know, what should I do?
Yeah, absolutely. They can call me at shall I give my phone number?
Yeah, if you want to, you can give your phone number. We'll also, yeah.
So I live in Taos, New Mexico. I work from home. I don't keep office hours because neither does addiction or mental health. So you can call me anytime. My number is 575-779-6062. And maybe Amanda could put that in the chat. I don't know whether they can, see the chat on the podcast.
We will probably, if you don't mind, we'll put it in the notes or what we'll have, whenever we do the introduction, we'll put it there.
And then also my website is rightfitcollaborative.com. And so, I started my own business in 2018. I asked myself the question, what is it you really do? And my answer was, I find the right fit for treatment for people. And that looks different things it looks like different things for different people. There's nothing cookie cutter about this. And so just really, being with a person and listening and understanding and asking even more questions. This is how we find the right fit.
Right. Okay. So let me just say that again. It's right. RIGHT fit collaborative.com.
Yep, that's it.
Very nice. Okay. Well, Sherry, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. I thank you so much for the conversation. I think we've gone over a lot of information today. I hope people that are listening have a better understanding of maybe some signs and symptoms, and then what to do if they find themselves like, I really do think I have an issue, or maybe a family member has an issue or a colleague has an issue. And what are the different levels of treatment? Maybe that's not such a black box anymore or an unknown. And who do I call? And so I just want to thank you very much for being my discussion partner today in unpacking this for all of our listeners.
Thank you, Pam. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Wellbeing Committee and the New Mexico Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Gil Flores. The views of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.